In this video, we will show you how to replace your serpentine belt tensioner on this Kia Forte Koup with a 2.4-liter engine. This will be located along the passenger side of your engine. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Make your way along the passenger side of the engine. We need to have a look at the belt routing. You'll find that it goes over some pulleys and under others. We have to dislodge the belt, so make sure you take a quick note. To gain access to the serpentine belt tensioner, we'll be using a 17mm. Take hold of your power steering hose. We'll bring this all the way deep down into this area and get onto that serpentine belt tensioner bolt in the center. Let's get that on there. Now we'll be pivoting this towards the rear of the engine. While holding it there, we can dislodge the belt from one of the pulleys. Now while holding pressure on this, it's easiest to remove the belt from along the back side of the engine, right along the water pump. We'll just pull it right off the side there. Got plenty of slack. There. Remove your tool from the tensioner. Now that we have the belt off of here, the next thing that I like to do is carefully put a jack with a piece of wood gently underneath the oil pan, applying light pressure. While applying a light amount of pressure here, let's make our way back up inside the engine compartment. To gain access in this area, it's easiest if we dislodge the power steering reservoir, set that aside so we can remove the upper engine mount bracket on the passenger side of the engine. Use a 10mm for each of the mounting bolts. We'll just take this and rest it off to the side. Careful not to spill anything. Now to start removing this bracket, you're going to find you have a ground wire. This is held in place to that bracket top with a 10mm bolt. Let's get that out of the way. A quick inspection of the ground wire, make sure it's not corroded in any way. We'll set that aside. Continuing from here, you're going to find that you have 3 17mm headed mounting nuts and 1 17mm headed mounting bolt. You have one of the nuts here, one there, one in the center, and the bolt is on the rear. Let's get that bolt. Get that in a second. Let's get this last one. To continue removing things to gain access easily to that tensioner, we're going to remove the upper idler pulley right here. This idler pulley is held in place with a 14mm headed mounting bolt. We'll be turning this bolt counterclockwise to remove it. It's going to be a tight fit here. It's getting close to the body of the vehicle. When you go to remove this, you may have to raise or lower the engine as needed. At this point, we can see the pulley for the tensioner fairly easily, but before we start removing that, let's get this belt out of the way. The belt makes its way all the way over to the water pump from here, so we'll just take hold of that and slide it towards the front of the vehicle. To remove the tensioner from the engine, you have to remove the pulley first. And to remove the pulley, we'll be turning the 17mm headed mounting bolt clockwise to remove it. It's essentially reverse thread. this towards the front of the engine. If you end up using a ratcheting wrench for this, just be extremely careful. Once the bolt starts coming out, it may get your wrench bound up against the body of the vehicle. Now we'll pull the pulley and the bolt out of here. A quick note about that pulley is typically it does have a washer that goes in between the pulley and the bolt. Remove your pulley, set it aside. Now let's have a close look at the brand new tensioner. The reason why we want to look at this is because the next mounting bolt is extremely hard to see while the tensioner is still in the vehicle. Now, assuming you just pulled off that tensioner pulley, underneath that is right where you're going to find the mounting bolt that goes through the tensioner into the engine. Like I said, it's hard to see down inside this area while the tensioner is still in the vehicle. To remove this mounting bolt, we'll be using a 17 millimeter. The tensioner is broken free from the engine. Let's go ahead and pull it out of here. There it is, friend. With that out of there, the next thing you need to do is clean and inspect the mounting points for the idler pulley and for the tensioner assembly. Okay, friends, it's time to prepare to install the brand new tensioner assembly. Before we can install this in the vehicle, there's a couple things that we need to pay attention to. First of all, we're going to have to remove that tensioner pulley, of course. To do that, use a 14 millimeter, and keep in mind, you need to turn this clockwise. Just like on the original, you should have a washer. Remove that pulley and set the hardware aside. Now focusing on the tensioner itself, if you were to look along the backside on the base, you're going to find one locating tab. That tab needs to fit into the corresponding hole on the engine block at the same time as the mounting bolt hole is aligned as well. A quick note, when bringing this down, we want to essentially have it in this positioning, so this slotted area is facing essentially straight down. Now we've got it close to the proper position. The next thing we need to do is make sure that we're connected at those mounting points. We have the bolt hole and that locating tab. Just bring this up, try to get everything aligned, twist it as needed. Clearly it's impossible to see while you're doing this. Now that I have the tensioner assembly in the proper position, with the mounting bolt started, we'll bottom it out. The torque for this is 47 foot-pounds. Now it's time to install the brand new tensioner pulley with the mounting hardware. We'll make sure that we have the washer in the proper positioning so the cupped end is facing out and away from the pulley. One last note about the tensioner pulley. Along the backside where the bearing is, the port needs to fit over this area of the tensioner. Now when installing this, we'll have everything together, carefully get it in place. Now that I've got that started in there, we're just going to confirm that the pulley is properly seated, and now we can snug this up. When snugging it up, we'll be continuing by turning it counterclockwise until it's bottomed out. The torque for this is also 47 foot-pounds. Clearly, there isn't much room in this area to get a torque wrench. If you find you're having a hard time fitting it in there, you could use a Serpentine bell tool with a 14mm adapter on it. That'll be a thin enough application that we can make our way in between the pulley bolt and the body of the vehicle. Now, since we're going to be turning this counterclockwise, you're going to find that the tensioner moves quite a bit before it even starts trying to tighten this. What we're going to do is pivot it all the way rearward counterclockwise as far as possible and hold it there with something like a small pry bar or even a screwdriver if necessary, so we can regroup with our ratchet and tighten this mounting bolt. Okay, so right there that bolt is bottomed out. The torque for this is 47 foot-pounds. We're just going to try to get it nice and tight. Gonna have to get some pressure on this so we can get our pry bar / screwdriver out of there. Now it's time for the idler pulley. This in position. Start in the mounting bolt, snug it up, torque that to 47 foot-pounds as well. To tighten this bolt, you're going to find you have minimal room in between the bolt head and the body of the vehicle, just like with that tensioner. We'll be using the same tool, 14mm, to tighten this up. this time clockwise. Right there is bottomed out. Make sure it's nice and tight, approximately 47 foot-pounds. Now it's time to reinstall the Serpentine belt. We want to make sure we have it in the proper belt routing. A lot of the pulleys I can see from along the top here. Reach down. Now we need to pay attention especially to the lower pulleys. Down along the bottom on the front, you have your AC compressor pulley, and then heading towards the rear, you have your crank pulley, which is the main pulley there. We need to make sure that the Serpentine belt is sitting over each and every one of the pulleys. If it's off by even one groove, you could potentially cause serious damage to the belt or even the engine. Now, while I've got that in the proper positioning here, we're going to apply pressure to that tensioner. That's going to release tension on the belt, and we can carefully bring it over the last pulley. All right, there's a pulley right there. Before we remove the tool, a quick inspection of the belt. As I mentioned, all those ribbed areas need to be seated perfectly. Check that water pump along the back. This looks good. Let's get the tool out of here. Once you're sure the belt's in proper placement, we'll continue on with our upper bracket. Start on all the hardware. Once you have everything started on, snug it up, torque it to 61 foot-pounds. Now it's time for the ground wire. We'll get that in position. Start in your 10mm bolt and snug it up. Double check, make sure that's properly secured. Let's get this power steering reservoir in place. Remove support from under your engine. Okay, friend, we finished the installation of our Serpentine belt tensioner. At this point, hop in the passenger compartment, start up the vehicle, let it run for approximately 5 seconds and turn it right back off. Make your way back out here and triple check the belt, ensuring that it's sitting on each one of the pulleys properly. Assuming it is, go ahead and make your way back in the passenger compartment and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.